So we got Shevchenko versus Grasso, 2, Kaiko front versus Amir Albazi, Chris Curtis versus Anthony Hernandez, Jessica Andrade versus Tatiana Suarez, as well as many other fight announcements that have been made recently, which I'm going to go over in today's video, giving my reaction and breakdown of the fights, my early predictions, and just talk about all these fight announcements that have happened recently. There's been quite a lot of them. So starting off with the most recent one and a title fight announcement, we've got Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso 2, which is the rematch, is official for September 16th, which is to be headlining a fight night at the T-Mobile Arena on Mexican Independence Day. Um, this was rumored for quite a while. The rematch was obviously going to happen. We knew Valentina being a long reigning champion when she lost her belt. Typically, you see those get a rematch. We just didn't know when. And in the last few weeks, there were rumors circulating about a card on Mexican Independence Day. And we all assumed that would be headlined, obviously, by a Mexican fighter or champion, which we do have in Alexa Grasso. So the rematch being booked, a very good fight. Looking forward to it a lot. It's a tough one to predict given how the first fight went. Obviously, Valentina was dominating for quite a lot of the fight, but then obviously made that mistake in the fourth round and got submitted by Alexa Grasso, and lost her title, which she hadn't lost in quite a while. I think it was like a 10 fight win streak or not 8 fight winning streak or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see what she looks like when she's not the champion going into a matchup. Alexa Grasso, obviously the younger fighter, the less experienced fighter, but also now the fighter with renewed confidence after winning the belt in a fight that she was losing as well. To win that belt, come from behind and get a submission victory over probably the second greatest female fighter of all time behind Amanda Nunes. To submit her in the fourth round in a fight she was losing, that's going to give her a lot more confidence, in my opinion, going into this fight. Obviously, being on Mexican Independence Day, while not in Mexico, I imagine there will be quite a few of her fans there. A lot of other there looks to be a lot of other Mexican fighters on that card as well, obviously in the T-Mobile Arena as well, going back to where she won the belt back on March 5th at UFC 285. So maybe going back there will give her somewhat of an advantage, perhaps. Um, but with the fight as well, I think I'll probably slightly lean with Alexa Grasso. Um, just given the first fight, obviously you wouldn't be like I wouldn't tell you you're wrong to be picking Valentina. Obviously, she was looking very good in the first fight, on her way to a win. Looked dominant. But I just think recently in her last fights against Tyler Santos and then against Grasso, even when she was winning against Grasso, she didn't look as good as she was. Like she does look to be regressing a little bit in her career and on the way down. And it did kind of show, especially in that Santos fight where she really like close 2 rounds to three decision, which could have gone Santos's way to be honest. Um, and then against Grasso as well, just like winning the fight, not like it was dominant, but she didn't look super impressive. Like she wasn't really winning on the feet by that much. She was just getting some takedowns like normal, but didn't look specifically dominant or just like demolishing Alexa Grasso anyway. And then did that spinning kick, got her back taken and got submitted as well. You got to think that's going to have an effect on her confidence, fighting someone that she's lost by finish as well. Obviously, like she's fought Amanda Nunes twice, lost both times, but wasn't finished in those fights. And in the first fight as well, had a really good third round against Nunes, and then coming into the second fight, really close decision. So that's like a bit different there. But getting finished as well and losing your belt is a bit different to when she was up at bantamweight trying to get Nunes' belt. So I'll be leaning with Alexa Grasso here. I think being younger, more confident now, like I really think she's going to be on the rise, making improvements. And to be honest, in that fight, she didn't look at her best before she got the finish. Um, like she was looking decent, but wasn't really looking spectacular. She was landing fairly well on the feet, but she wasn't really stuffing like many of the takedowns. So in this rematch, I do expect to see her work a lot more on the grappling and be able to be more equipped to stuff the takedowns of Shevchenko. She's obviously working with that team with Diego Lopes as well, who's her jiu-jitsu coach, who we saw against Evloev a few months later. Really good grappler. He's also got a fight booked, which we're going to talk about. But like I think that's a big advantage as well. They're really going to know now. I think the rematch does benefit Grasso regardless of the result. I just think as a champion, looking at the contenders, it's like you've got your way to win every time. The contenders are trying to figure out how to beat you. And now I think Grasso does know that. Grasso knows to really stick to striking. She was landing well on Valentina. And then also, don't be afraid with the grappling. Just stuff takedowns, but grapple confidently. I think she can have some good scrambles with Valentina, who I think is slowing down. And I'll predict her to get I think she'll get a TKO victory this time. Again in the fourth round, I think it'll be a back and forth fight, a lot closer than the first one was before the finish. But I do believe that Alexa Grasso is going to be a much improved fighter when we see her next on September 16th, and I do think she's going to retain the belt. That being said, though, I do think she will lose the belt to Erin Blanchfield. I think she's the one that will hold that belt in the division for a long time. Um, but also with this fight headlining a fight night, so not a pay per view, it's a fight night main event with a title fight on the line. Something we don't usually see. Um, not very often. It's usually reserved for the women's title fights that wouldn't really sell many pay per views. That's kind of what we've seen historically. But also looking at that flyweight division now as well, with this being made, which was the next step, I'd predict we're seeing probably either Erin Blanchfield wait for the winner and get an immediate title shot, or an Erin Blanchfield fight Manan Fiorot on that Paris card. Obviously, Manan Fiorot is from France, and that September card, obviously 2 weeks earlier, would be really good to get a contender fight in. So right away there's an opponent for the winner to fight next. So that's what I think we'll see. We'll probably see a Manan Fiorot versus either Erin Blanchfield or Tyler Santos in France. It would make more sense to be Blanchfield though if they were looking at giving her a title shot, which I think she deserves over Santos. So I think that's what we're going to see next. But moving on to Kai Kara France versus Manel Kape, which is in the works and close to finalised for UFC 293 in Sydney, Australia. That's September 9th. Really good fight in the flyweight division and a very quick turnaround for Kai Kara France, obviously. Got the decision loss in June. It wasn't a loss, he won that fight. Got robbed. But it's good to see he's turning around quick, like July, August, September, 3 month turnaround. Really good to see from him. He's hungry. He knows he won that fight and he wants to get that win back. Obviously, he is on a 2-loss streak now, but a really close decision, which I think and most people think he won against Albazi, and then obviously that fight with Moreno for the interim title, which let's be honest, like really close, could have been up 2-1, either way, I guess, going into that third round, and was looking really good and arguably doing better than Moreno, but he did get caught. Obviously, that's how the game goes. But Manel Kape, obviously, fighter on the rise as well, out of Portugal. Um, really making a name for himself recently. He's calling out a lot of guys on Twitter, putting everyone on blast for not accepting fights with him. He had a fight booked with Alex Perez on the Corey Sanhagen versus Chito Vera card, which got cancelled on fight day. Got some really impressive wins as well in the bantamweight division. Fought Mateus Nicolau, fought guys like that. And he is regarded as an up-and-comer and someone who could get the belt in the flyweight division. So the prediction for this fight is tough. If you're picking Kape, then I don't blame you, but you're kind of going off less seen. You think you might catch Kai, land a big shot, or be better than him. But if you're picking Kai, which I am, I think Kai is going to win a decision here in a 3-rounder. I think it'll be my prediction is leaning because I think he's so hungry and he knows he's there. He knows he's at the top of that division. And on paper right now, he's only ranked number 5. But let's be honest, that fight with Albazi kind of revealed who the better fighter was. Um, he's lost to Royval, but that was like a crazy exchange, like weird kind of fight there, but did lose. Apart from that, like Moreno, with flyweight, you see a lot of the guys have already actually fought each other, so it's kind of weird. But I do think he'll win this fight with Kape. I think in Australia, not his home country, but right next door. So you can say he'll have the home ground advantage. I think he's going to be just so hungry and so motivated to get a win back and prove that he's in that top 5 still, which he clearly is, but against a fighter who's up and coming, and I think someone who people regard as a title threat in Manel Kape. I think he'll be really determined to turn that guy back and prove that I'm still that guy, and he deserves a title shot next, or with another win probably. But with that fight, I think on the feet it's very close. Kape, you'd say, would probably have the power advantage. I don't see this fight being contested in the grappling too much, but I think Kai is just going to land just like bit cleaner and a bit more volume over the 3 rounds that this will be contested over. Not sure where it's going to be on the card, maybe on the pay-per-view, maybe a prelim headliner. But this, and then there's a few other fights. There's 2 other fights so far announced for that Australia card, but nothing really notable. So we're still looking to get some big names like Tai Tuivasa and Robert Whittaker and all that, or Jack Della Maddalena, maybe Volk. All those guys on that card will be sick. But moving on, Chris Curtis versus Anthony Hernandez, also on that September 16th card with Grasso and Shevchenko. A really good fight in the middleweight division. A quick turnaround for Curtis as well, which I wasn't really expecting. 3-month turnaround. He's got a habit of taking these quick turnarounds. Obviously, he had that fight with Gastelum in April, turnaround in June, like real quick turnaround there. And now got head butted and couldn't continue. So took a bit of damage in that Imavov fight and was losing quite comfortably. But turning around 3 months later, it's kind of tough. I'm picking against him. I'm going to pick Anthony Hernandez to win by a decision or maybe a submission. I think Hernandez is really good. He looked super good in his last fight against Edmund Shabazian. Beat Rodolfo Vieira. Like, he's got some really good wins, underrated wins on his resume. And I think he's a guy to watch in that middleweight division to maybe crack the top 10 even. Got cardio for days, as we saw in the Edmund fight, just pushing a pace that just is really tough to be matched. And then Curtis, like, he had this perfect takedown defense record. Sorry, he had this perfect takedown defense record going into that Imavov fight, but he really hadn't been shot on that much. So it was kind of like, okay, like, it's the same with Gane. Like, before the Ngannou fight, he had 100% takedown rate, and then he got wrestle fucked by Ngannou and got like dragged down to the mat by Jones. So it's like, you really can't trust these takedown ratios. You really got to be looking at who's actually trying to take them down. So I think Hernandez is going to win this fight through the grappling. He's a cardio machine, grappling machine, super strong, very durable as well. Took some shots against Edmund early where he's dangerous and got past it. And I just don't think Curtis is going to offer too much for him. I think Curtis will be better on the feet, but I just don't think he's going to have that level of takedown defense or the cardio to match with Hernandez. I think Curtis has really been exposed to be a bit outside that top 10 level. Like, he KO'd Buckley, who's now down at 170. He's got some good wins on his resume, but like with the Imavov fight, got schooled before the headbutt. Got schooled by Hermanson over 3 rounds, who's just scraping that top 10 caliber. So like, I think I don't want to call him overrated, but I'll say like he's not as good as people think. Like, he trains with Strickland, and a lot of them have common opponents, and then you just look at the vast difference in the fights. Like, Strickland outclassed Imavov and beat him 4 rounds to 1. Strickland outclassed Hermanson and beat him to a decision. Like, just some of these wins, you can just tell there's a difference between the two of them, even though they're training together all the time. And you'd think that Curtis would have been game planning for these guys really effectively, having Strickland have gone 5 rounds with them, and Curtis now only needs 3, but I guess not. So I'm not that high on Curtis. He's a really fun fighter, and I'm not a massive fan of his mentality either. After the Gastelum fight, like, I get it, he got headbutted, but he was like calling for like rematches and stuff. Like, he was acting like he got robbed in that fight. So I just prefer to see a fighter in that kind of scenario just be like, okay, decision didn't go my way, regardless if it was a win or a loss. Just like Kai, turning around quick, which I did appreciate that he did against Imavov, and he didn't make any excuses in that fight either. But I don't know, just something about it. I just think Hernandez is the guy on the rise right now. I think Curtis is the guy that's had his ceiling tested and proved, and I don't think that ceiling is going to rise any further. I think he's hit that ceiling, and I think his ceiling was that number 14 spot in the middleweight division. So I don't think he's getting much higher than that. But moving on, so picking Hernandez by decision. Moving on, Jessica Andrade versus Tatiana Suarez is official for August 5th. That's the Nashville card, headlined by Corey Sandhagen and Umar Nurmagomedov. A good fight. Tatiana Suarez was scheduled to fight Verna Jandiroba, which Verna pulled out due to injury, and now Andrade is stepping in on short notice. Still got a bit to go until this fight, obviously, in August 5th. But coming off a brutal KO loss to Yan Xiaonan in early May, I'm not a massive fan of this turnaround. June, July, August, like 3 months turnaround again. Like, it's not something I like to see. You got KO'd. Like against like turning arounds from the Blanchford loss, I'm like okay with. Turning arounds from the Murphy loss, like she fought in January, turned around to fight in February on short notice, and I was like cool. And I didn't pick her to win, but I was like this will be real competitive and she'll give Blanchford problems on the feet. Lost that fight by submission, took a little bit of damage on the feet, turned around in May, so that's like 3 month turnaround, 2.5 months, got KO'd, and we're like, okay, don't expect to see her back for a while. But not I guess you could call her the BMF of the female division, just taking fights with anyone. Her resume's got pretty much everyone across 125 and 115 on it, so like you really can't fault that. But just given how she looked in her last two previous fights, getting exposed in the grappling and dominated by Anna Blanchfield and submitted in the second, and then also getting KO'd rushing in by Yan Jianan. Really just shows two easy, clear paths to victory. So I will pick Suarez to win by a finish, whether that be a submission or a TKO. I'm not sure. More likely a submission. Suarez is a very good grappler. Moving down to the 115-pound division, I believe. Obviously had a return fight against Montella De La Rosa at 125, and then announced immediately afterwards she did want to fight at strawweight. With this fight as well, though, Suarez is just so much technically better everywhere. I think her grappling is just going to be levels above Andrade's. I think it's going to look a lot like the Blanchfield fight. Um, if it'll actually be kind of interesting to see if Suarez makes it look easier than Erin Blanchfield, then she's really legit. And even though she's not in the flyweight division anymore, that'll really show where she's at. And if she beats Andrade dominantly and finishes her, you could be seeing a title shot because right now we got Zhang Weili versus Amanda Lemos is scheduled for August 19th. So that's 2 weeks after Suarez versus Andrade. Um, so you got that. Yan Janan obviously coming off the win over Andrade, KO in the first round. She does look to be next, but I feel like if they're gonna do that fight, they'd probably want to do it as like a fight night China main event, like they're kind of doing with this Grasso Shevchenko thing. So I could see if Yan Janan was okay with waiting, if they're like, okay, we're looking to make this fight in China, but can you just wait? You don't have to fight anyone else. Can you just wait till maybe like April or something next year? Then she might be okay with that. I wouldn't say like that's an amazing thing, but like if they're like we want to get Wei Li to have a few like another title fight in between, you could be looking at a Suarez versus Wei Li for a title in like December or something like that. Um, if Wei Li doesn't take too much damage against Lemos. So I do always like to see title fights and contender fights be scheduled either on the same card, like we're seeing with the bantamweights on UFC 292, or very close, like with the middleweight division. How no title fight scheduled, but a lot of contender fights, like Cannonier Vittori. So not really for a contender, but you had Amava versus Curtis June 9th, Cannonier versus Vittori June 16th, Strickland versus Magomedov July 1st, Whitaker versus Dricus Duplessis July 8th, and then Costa versus Ikram July 31st. So like that's what is it? That's 5 fights, 5 top contenders, and then Allen versus Bruno Silva as well this weekend. So that's like 6 top 15 fights you could say in the space of like 6 weeks. So I really like that to really clear out the division and show where everyone's at and who should be next. Same with UFC 292. Like you've got the bantamweight title fight with O'Malley and Sterling as the headliner, and then also on that card you got Vera versus Cejudo. You got Font versus Song Yadong, and then 2 weeks earlier as well on that August 5th card, you've obviously got Corey Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. So that August 5th card is one to keep an eye on, not just for the great fights that are on there, but also for the possible next contenders. Like we could be seeing two next title fight challenges out of that card, and then 2 weeks later, obviously, you see which champions come out victorious. So it should be interesting to see. But as the prediction goes, I'm gonna pick Suarez by a third round sub. If she does it in 1 or 2, does it quicker than Blanchfield, then that's very impressive. Moving on. Volkan Oezdamir versus Azamat Murzakanov is official for September 2nd. That's the UFC Paris card, headlined by Gavin versus Spivak. A good fight in the light heavyweight division. Murzakanov coming off that good win over Dustin Jacoby. Volkan Oezdamir coming off the loss to Nikita Krylov, I believe, at UFC 280 back in October, Abu Dhabi. I'm going to pick Murzakanov in this fight. not too much to say about it. He looked very good against Jacoby. It wasn't favored to win that fight, but really just showed a good path to win and showed really good abilities in the grappling as well. And actually outstruck Jacoby for the most part, apart from in that last round where Jacoby did come on strong trying to get a finish, but wasn't able to. Murzakanov on the come up, a light heavyweight. Oezdamir's kind of on the way down. He's been shown where he's at. Lost to those guys. Lost to Paul Craig. Lost to Yuri. Lost to Krylov. So he's kind of out of that top contender area, floating down into the top 10, top 15 kind of. And I think Murzakanov on the way up, younger fighter, looks a lot better in his last fights. He appears to be the one that's progressing, while Oezdamir appears to be regressing. So I'll pick Murzakanov to win, probably a decision. Oezdamir's pretty tough, and Murzakanov, he's got power, so he could get a TKO. Maybe I'll go with a TKO. See what the odds are on that closer to the fight, but Murzakanov should win this fight, I believe. Moving on, Guram Kutateledze versus Elves Brenner, July 1st. That's next week. This is a short notice fight. Elves Brenner was scheduled to fight Jordan Levitt on this Strickland Abbas Magomedov card, and it's a tough go for him because he had Levitt, winnable fight, might have even lost that fight, and now he's getting Guram Kutateledze. So it's a respect to him. That's a tough fight to take on short notice. Obviously, Guram was booked to fight Jamie Malarkey, but then Guram pulled out due to visa issues, so it wasn't an injury. We thought it was an injury, so we're like, oh, we're not going to see him again for a while. But it was visa issues. So 3 weeks later, I believe, yeah, because he was scheduled on that June 2nd card. So a few weeks later, and now he's got a fight booked for that Strickland card, and I think he should win this fight very dominantly. If he wants to prove he's in that area, he should run through Elves Brenner and finish him. If he doesn't, then that's gonna take a bit of the shine away from him. Obviously, it's a weird kind of situation for Guram. He's only got 2 fights in the UFC. Beat Mateus Gamrot, which is very impressive, in a close decision, which a lot of people thought he lost, and then lost to Damir Ismagulov in a decision, which I do think he did lose that fight. So it's kind of weird. Like, he's being touted as one of the best guys in the lightweight division based off a close split decision win, which could have gone the other way, and a relatively clear decision loss, just because he's fighting top level guys. Like, he's fighting high, but like Gamrot got shown levels by Dariush, who just got starched by Oliveira. And then Ismagulov, who just got out grappled for 15 minutes against Arman Sayukian last December. Like, not to take anything away from Sayukian or Ismagulov or Mateus Gamrot by any means. Like, all very good fighters in their own right. Sayukian is the best of that lot, I believe. But I just don't like that. Obviously, Guram's a very good fighter. He's shown to be in that. He's definitely a top 15 level fighter. But for people to be saying he's like a nightmare matchup for some of these top like 5 guys, for him to say like, I'm hearing people say with confidence that he would beat Poirier or beat Gaethje or beat Fiziev or something, and I'm like, how are you going to be saying that? Like, he hasn't fought. He's so inactive. He's arguably the most. He's probably the most inactive fighter in the lightweight division right now. Like, it would be Gregor Gillespie, but he's gone. He's long gone. He got KO'd by Kevin Lee and then dipped. So I don't know what's going on with him either. But just with Guram, like, 2020 for Gamrot, 2022 for Ismagulov in June on the Kape vs Emmett card, and then he's coming back in July 2023. Like, a year off, over a year off, and we're expecting to see him like make this run at the title like he's some young 25-year-old. Like, the guy's like 32, 33. He's like the same age as most of the guys at lightweight. It's not like he's got so much longer in his career than all of them. He's had some health issues and stuff like that. He's obviously, I don't know, I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but he's a very good fighter and he'll beat Elves Brenner. But I just don't think, if I see him win this fight, even by finish, I don't care. If he could KO Brenner out cold. But if people are then going to start saying, like, give him like a top 10 guy, like, give him like a Jalen Turner or some shit like that, it's like, no, what the fuck? Like, fight into the rankings. Stop. He came back after 2 years, fought Ismagulov and lost. Ismagulov's now fighting Grant Dawson, and if he loses that, he's going to retire. Ismagulov did briefly retire after losing to Sayukian, so it's just odd to me. But he'll win this fight by finish. If not, I'm not impressed by your performance. Um, but then moving on, Diego Lopes versus Gavin Tucker for August 5th. I don't have too much to say on the Gavin Tucker side of things. I'm not extremely familiar with him. He does have some wins in the UFC. I think he's 2-4, I believe. Let me just check that one real quick. He's 4-2. Sorry, my bad. So 4-2 in the UFC. Not he's got a win over Billy Quarantillo, so that's an impressive win. But I really just wanted to put this. If it wasn't for Diego Lopes being in this fight, it would be right down the end in the section where I just go through and just give a name and then don't even talk about the fight. But just I wanted to give a brief cameo talking about Diego Lopes because this guy is really good and I'm a big fan of his. Um, Obviously, if you follow the Instagram, you would have seen he's liked a few of my posts over there. He's a fan of Left Lane. He knows of the channel. And I've been a big fan of him after that Evloev fight. I'd heard of him a bit going into that Movzar fight. But obviously, as literally 95% of people did, probably more, 99% of people picked Evloev. But then he came out straight away, looked really good, rocked Evloev, had some really close submission attempts. Won round one, in my opinion, pretty clear. Lost round two, got kind of beat up on the ground, came back strong. Arguably could have won round three. I'm just gonna say it. With some judging, like that's less far fetched of a decision. I'm just gonna say this: if you score Movzar Evloev versus Diego Lopes for Diego Lopes 29-28 with the first and third for Lopes, that is a less controversial decision than Kai France versus Emil Elbazi going to Elbazi. I'm just gonna say it. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I value submission attempts more than kneeing the back of the thigh in the clinch or kicking the legs in the clinch. Like, sure, those are decent shots and they're gonna like bruise up your leg a bit, but you're talking about close to fight ending positions. Second round clearly went to Evloev. Clearly, he was beating him up on the ground. But that third round, Evloev didn't really get many takedowns. He got a takedown, and then Lopes turned it into a Kimura. Almost got him with a Kimura straight arm kind of lock from bottom. Looked really close there. Swept him, ended up on top for a little bit, got back up, went back down, went for it again, didn't really have it. Went for a knee bar twice, two really solid knee bar attempts. The second one had Evloev visibly grimacing. So I look at that as a judge. If I'm a judge, I'm like, that was closer. That's what the scoring criteria is meant to be on, isn't it? Like everyone says the scoring criteria is bullshit and it's outdated and stuff, but regardless of if it is or not, like I think no matter any scoring I see a guy getting two really close submission attempts in the final round of the fight and having the guy's knee bending past its axis like that. Um, then like this is knee, it's bending like that, like it's going weird ways, like and he was visibly grimacing too. I think you can't score that less than just Evloev landing some decent shots on the feet and then kneeing him in the leg real hard in the clinch. Like, sure, that's going to hurt a bit and it's going to hurt tomorrow, but like, that's not a fight ending position. So I'm just going to say, if I'm scoring that fight, I'm giving a real consideration to Diego Lopes 29-28. No judge has scored it for him. One of them scored it 30-27 for Evloev, which was ridiculous. I don't know how you scored the first round for Evloev, but regardless, I just wanted to talk about that a bit. So I'm obviously picking Lopes in this fight. Really big fan of his. I think he can go a long way in the featherweight division. I think he could really crack the top 10 and give a few of those guys a tough time. After that Evloev fight, I was even calling for, um, I was saying Mitchell. I was saying Bryce Mitchell. And my mate said to me, he's like, "What the fuck? That's stupid. Like, why you lost to a ranked opponent? Why do you get another ranked opponent as a debuting fighter?" And I'm like, because of that exact reason. He's a debuting fighter and he came in and arguably could have beat the number 10 ranked guy, Evloev, who people are saying is like winning a belt in the next few years. And he's like the next thing out of Russia in the featherweight division. And he took that guy to a close decision and probably damaged him more than Evloev damaged Lopes, to be honest. Like I know who was sore a week later. I know who had to take a week off training because they needed to go get their knee checked out for MCL tears. Like I know who that was. That was Evloev. He's the one that his fucking leg bending like that, and you could see it was like full fucking twisted and shit. Like I'm saying that's more valuable to me than some knees to the legs, which is probably just going to bruise up your thigh the next few days. Get some ice on it, it'll be fine. So I'm picking Evloev. No, I'm not picking Evloev. Evloev is not fighting, but I'm picking Diego Lopes to beat Gavin Tucker dominantly. I think that's his only fight in the UFC to go off. He's fought some guys outside of it, not too, but like you don't really need to look at that. Like for the next 5 fights of his, until he fights someone like up to that level, or until he has like a good fight with someone where he really shows something different, then I think this Evloev fight's the only fight you really need to look at. So I think he should win this. I think by submission, maybe a TKO, because he did hurt Evloev on the feet too. But I'm expecting him to beat Gavin Tucker quite easily. That's on the August 5th card. So another really good fight added to that Nashville card. In front of an arena, I'm expecting him to get a big pop in front of the crowd. He's got a fan in me, so I hope he does. Hope many other guys appreciate his skills that he showed. But moving on, I talked about this for a bit. Jerimiah Wells versus Carlston Harris. I'll be picking Jerimiah Wells. He looked pretty good in that Semmelsberger fight. Did get dropped and hurt on the feet, but it did come back. Did look really good with the takedowns in that fight. And won a pretty clear. Actually, no, I wouldn't say a clear decision, but looked good in that fight. And is on the way up in that welterweight division. Carlston Harris, just looking at his record, obviously Jeremiah Wells undefeated in the UFC. Carlston Harris 3-1. He's beat Michel Pereira in Sanganai, so some good wins there. Jeremiah Wells beaten Warley Elves, Cole McGee, and Matthew Semmelsberger. So like relatively even in competition. The Pereira win is probably the most impressive win out of all those combined wins that I've mentioned. But I just think Semmelsberger hits like a truck, really powerful, really good cardio, very good wrestling as well, and good pressure, and he's just super strong. So I think he should win this fight by decision or maybe a TKO finish. Moving on, Chidi and Njokuani versus Michal Oleksiejczuk is official for August 26th. That's the Zombie versus Holloway card in Singapore. I'll be picking Njokuani in this fight. I think he looked pretty good in his last fight, even though it was a loss to Elba Jurayev. Michal Oleksiejczuk, coming off the loss to Borrelio. Actually, it's a pretty close fight. I'll give you an actual prediction when it gets here. In a few months' time. Should be a very competitive fight in the middleweight division. Both guys, very good fighters. But both looked pretty good in last fights. Despite the losses. Obviously, Borrelio's a real up and comer in that middleweight division. So losing to him is not something to be ashamed of whatsoever. I'm just trying to find this fight really quickly. So losing to Borrelio in the middleweight division is not a bad loss to have on your record. I cannot find this fight on Big Marcel. My apologies. Regardless, where the fuck is it? Here we go. Sorry. Njokuani, 2-2 in the UFC. Got wins over Max Griffin, Dusko Trijovic. Oleksiejczuk's got wins over Bukowskis, Cody Brundage, and Sam Alvey. So, not crazy wins there, but both good fighters. Should be a competitive scrap. And probably will go the distance, but I think it should be a fun fight when it happens. Okay, so this video has gone a bit too fucking long. We're 34 minutes in. Just gonna run through all the minor ones and just give the names that I'm picking. We got Yana Santos versus Carol Rosa, July 1st. I'll pick Yana Santos. Bruno Silva versus Cody Durden, September 23rd. I'll pick Bruno Silva. That's flyweight Bruno Silva, by the way, not the middleweight one. Tucker Lutz versus Melsik Bagdasharian. I'll go Tucker Lutz. That's July 15th. Noro Corone versus Jocelyn Edwards, September 2nd. I'll go Edwards. That's on the Paris card. Zara Fern versus Haley Cohen, September 2nd. I'll go with Zara Fern. Nosultan Razaboyev versus Bruno Ferreira, July 1st. I'll go with Bruno Ferreira by KO. He made his debut in that Brazil card and got a big KO over Gregory Rodriguez. Looked very impressive in that fight and is a tank. He was going to fight Abdul Razak Al Hassan, which was going to be an absolute barn burner on the feet. now fighting a fighter making their debut out of Tajikistan. I don't know too much about the other guy, but I might do a bit of research into it because I don't want to make like uneducated predictions. But judging off what I've seen from Ferreira, he should win this fight by KO. Joe Anderson Brito versus Weston Wilson, July 1st. I'll go with Brito. He's the one been in fight camp, was scheduled to fight Ashkabov. Now got a new opponent. Um, Also, I did talk about it the other week. It wasn't actually official, but Rob Font versus Song Yadong is official now, finalized for that August 19th card. So it's a good fight there. I'm picking Song Yadong. But Cameron Simon versus Terrence Mitchell, July 8th. I'll pick Simon. A very promising prospect at bantamweight. Was gonna fight Christian Rodriguez, another prospect. Rodriguez pulled out. They wanted to keep him on this card. They always like having him and Duplessis on the same card. The African brothers. Um, so it should be good to see him. I think he'll get a win. Hopefully, he doesn't keep eye poking and nutshotting his opponents again because that's becoming an issue. Um, Last few. Liang Na versus JJ Aldrich in Singapore, August 26th. I'll go Aldrich. Um, Mizuki Inoue versus Hannah Goldie. I'll go with Goldie. And then when's that? That's September 23rd. And then finally, Brady Highstand versus Damon Blackshear, August 12th. I will pick Damon Blackshear. Looked very impressive in his last fight and finished Luan Lacerda viciously in the second round, so I'll pick him to win. But those are all the fight announcements for the video. Let me know what you think. No real like massive ones. Just wanted to make a fight announcement video. I'm trying to get one out of these every week. But I always kind of look for a big main event or notable ranked fight. I was thinking of doing it with Kyrus as Cap, but then I was like, wait for one more. And now with this title fight, Fight Night headliner being announced with Grasso and Shevchenko, I just decided to make this video. And quite a few smaller fights since I last did the one last week. They've announced they're really getting those months of August and September booked up now. We saw those ones in July really get booked up, started to book up the August cards, and now they're really trying to get September going as well with that Paris card as well and that T-Mobile fight night. So some pretty good fights being announced. The main ones, obviously, I'm picking Grasso against Shevchenko, but in a close fight. I'm picking Kai over Cap, picking Hernandez over Curtis. I'm picking Suarez over Andrade, Murzakanov over Oezdamir, Guram over Brenner, and Lopes over Tucker. And then the other ones, not heaps important. Wells over Harris, Njokuani over Oleksiejczuk. So some really good fights being announced. Go check out my prediction video for Emmett vs Taporia. I released that on Tuesday. Pretty happy with my picks. I'm pretty confident. I think I'm looking at at least 75% on that card. I'm picking Taporia if you didn't see the video, but go check it out. And then the next video should be a post-fight reaction for that Emmett Taporia card. And then obviously, any fight announcements, your boy's on it. So I'll be making more of those videos in the future. But I just wanted to say one more thing. With that Emmett versus Taporia card, I'm putting in some work for that because I'm in Australia. I live in Melbourne, Australia, in Victoria. So that card's an early start for US in Jacksonville. If you didn't know, if you're watching this from anywhere else but Australia, um, the early prelims for this fucking card, 1:30 a.m. Australia time. So I'm on the grind. I'm on the content grind, and I'm gonna stay up for that, or I'll wake up early for that and get no sleep on my Sunday morning, just for you guys. And then I'll be releasing a reaction video for that card. Very sleep deprived. Probably won't be all there, to be honest. I will release that and then I will promptly go to bed and get some fucking sleep. Um, but thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.